The vast emptiness of space stretched infinitely in every direction, a cold, silent ocean of stars, but no warmth, no mercy. The crippled scout ship Va-Lin drifted helplessly, its once sleek hull scarred by meteor strikes and battle damage. Flickering lights struggled to keep vital systems alive. The ship's slender frame was a ghost barely clinging to life amid the dark abyss. Inside the dim, cramped control room, Lieutenant Kyle ran a trembling hand along the cracked viewport. Outside, distant stars blinked coldly, indifferent to the suffering inside. The air was thin, recycled for too long, and the hum of failing machinery filled the silence like a dirge. Life support was failing, oxygen levels falling, power reserves drained to a dangerous minimum. Kale's crew had been abandoned. They had been sent on a reconnaissance mission to probe the edge of their empire's claimed territory, only to discover something their commanders wanted to bury. A strange, unexplored sector where no signals returned. But before they could report, a catastrophic attack left the Va-Lin crippled and adrift. Their own fleet, deeming the mission a failure and the crew expendable, had cut all ties, left them to perish silently, forgotten among the stars. "We won't last another cycle," whispered Miri, the ship's engineer, her voice barely audible, over the constant low alarms. Her eyes were sunken with exhaustion and fear. "Life support is barely stable. If the oxygen drops another 5%, Kale swallowed hard, feeling the weight of helplessness crush his chest. Around them, the other crew members moved like shadows, faces pale, bodies weak. They had rationed their supplies, fixed what little they could, and sent out a distress beacon, but it was faint, barely reaching beyond the dying ship's hull. KL's fingers hovered over the comm panel. No response, only static, an endless sea of white noise that mocked their desperation. Then, out of the void, something new. A crackle, faint but clear, sliced through the static. A voice, foreign, unfamiliar, spoke in a language unlike any they knew. The words were strange but carried an odd cadence, a rhythm that stirred something deep within Kale's memory. The voice was calm, firm, unyielding. It repeated once, twice. "Help is coming!" The crew froze, eyes wide with disbelief. Had their sensors malfunctioned? Was this a hallucination born of starvation and despair? Yet the signal persisted, steady and sure. Miri frantically tried to decode it. This is impossible. It's a dialect lost to history. Some call them myths. Humans. Humans? Kyle repeated, the word tasting strange on his tongue. Stories told to children of a species thought extinct or too distant to intervene in galactic affairs. A species known for resilience, for defying odds that crushed others. The very idea seemed like a spark of hope in a black void. Hope, a dangerous thing when you're stranded, left to die. Outside the viewport, the stars shimmered silently, as if watching. Suddenly, the ship jolted violently. Warning lights flared. Sensors picked up an unknown object, cloaked but moving fast, closing in. Hostile! Kale's voice cracked, urgency spiking. Miri's hands flew over the controls. "I don't know, but they're coming." The crew scrambled to battle stations. The Va-Lin, already crippled, was no match for an attacker. Kyle's mind raced. Could this be the executioner come to finish them, or something else? Could the strange signal be a warning? The alien crew braced as the unknown ship loomed closer, cloaking fields flickering, engines humming with lethal intent. But even as despair threatened to consume them, that mysterious voice on the comms repeated once more, unwavering. "Hold on. Help is coming." Kale's gaze hardened. Against every instinct, against every fear, he made a choice. They would fight. Not just for survival, but for the faintest, brightest hope in the endless dark. The Va-Lin shuddered again, metal groaning as its aging systems fought to keep pace with the sudden surge of activity. Alarms blared in the cramped corridors, but Cale barely heard them over the pounding of his own heart. His eyes darted from screen to screen as the sensors flickered, struggling to identify the cloaked vessel closing in on them. Unknown ship. No transponder. No prior records. They're coming in fast, Miri reported, her fingers flying across the console as she wrestled with failing scanners. They're matching our vector, but they're not broadcasting weapons yet. Cale swallowed his fear. Was this a rescue or a predator? The line between salvation and slaughter was razor thin out here. Get us ready to evade. Shields at maximum, power to engines. His voice was sharp, but inside, doubt gnawed at him. Prepare emergency protocols. We don't know who or what is out there. The crew moved with grim efficiency. Every second counted. Amid the chaos, a different storm brewed within the ship, one less visible but far deadlier. Kyle called a meeting in the cramped command chamber. The crew gathered, faces etched with exhaustion and fear. Trust was fraying, sharpened by days of isolation and despair. We need answers, Kyle said. Why were we abandoned? Who betrayed us? Eyes flickered toward Nira, the ship's second in command. She had been unusually quiet these last cycles, and whispers floated among the crew, suspicions that her loyalties might lie elsewhere. I didn't sabotage the mission, Nira said, her voice steady but cold. But someone did. And it wasn't the enemy we expected. A heavy silence fell. The truth clawed at the air between them. Miri interrupted, voice trembling as she turned to the comm panel. The signal, it's stronger now. I managed to partially decode it. Cale stepped forward. What does it say? It's a message, but in fragments. Part of it speaks of hope beyond the darkness and unseen allies. And then she hesitated, eyes wide. It mentions a name, the humans. Humans? Cale echoed. The word felt like a ghost. Legends told of humanity. Once, a dominant species, now nearly extinct or vanished. Stories of their stubborn resilience and unpredictable nature were passed down like myths. Could it be a trap? Another crew member muttered. Cale shook his head. We have no choice but to trust it. For now. If they're real, if help is coming, it's the only chance we have. Suddenly the ship jolted violently as the cloaked vessel decloaked for a brief moment, revealing sleek lines and unfamiliar markings, nothing like any alien tech Cale had seen. The ship's systems flickered with an alien energy signature. Prepare to engage, Cale ordered, gripping the console as the crew scrambled. But before weapons could fire, the comm crackled again. Valin, this is the human vessel Endurance. We come in peace. Stand down your weapons. The voice was calm, measured, and unmistakably human. Suspicion warred with hope. Kyle glanced at Nira, whose expression betrayed a flicker of disbelief. Why help us? Kyle demanded over the comm. Why risk yourself for a doomed mission? No one else cared about? There was a pause, then the captain's voice returned. Because in the vast darkness, every life counts. We don't abandon those in need, no matter their origin. Prepare for boarding. We will save you. The tension in the room broke just enough for a collective, hesitant breath. But trust was not yet won. As the Endurance drew closer, Kyle felt a chill, not from the cold void outside, but from the uncertainty within. Could humanity really be the saviors of a forgotten crew, or was this a new shadow threatening to consume them? The ship trembled again as the alien pursuers decloaked, weapons primed, charging toward them with lethal intent. In that moment, Kyle knew the battle for survival had only just begun, and that the true test was yet to come. The violin groaned as power surged through its battered hull, the crew scrambling to stabilize the failing systems while keeping a wary eye on the looming threats outside. The Endurance, the human ship, glided closer, its silhouette sleek and unfamiliar, an enigma wrapped in cold metal and quiet purpose. Cale's fingers hovered over the controls, a storm of conflicting emotions raging inside him. Hope flickered like a fragile flame, yet suspicion clawed beneath every thought. How could humans, mythic figures from ancient stories, just appear in this forsaken sector, risking everything to save them? And what was the true cost of their help? Suddenly the sensors screamed with alarms. Another ship, cloaked and deadly, was accelerating toward them, the alien faction that had abandoned the Valin. "They're here," Miri whispered, her face pale. "They want us dead." Kale's mind raced. The Valin was no match for their pursuers, but the humans. Could they defend them? Would they? "Hold the line," Kale commanded. "We're not finished yet." Outside, the void seemed to close in. The pursuer's ship flickered in and out of cloaking, like a predator stalking prey in the shadows, its weapons charged with a deadly hum, promising annihilation. Inside the Valin, tension mounted. Crew members exchanged nervous glances. They had been left to perish once. Would they face death again without a fight? Then the human captain's voice crackled over the comm. "Valin, prepare to be boarded. We will extract your crew safely. Trust us." Kale hesitated. "We don't know if we can." The human's calm reply was steady, unyielding. Trust is a choice. Survival is a necessity. The Endurance's boarding clamps extended, their magnetic locks clicking firmly onto the Valin's hull. The airlock hissed open, revealing a squad of human soldiers in advanced armor, sleek, efficient, and deadly. Kyle met their leader's eyes. A woman with a face marked by experience and a quiet fire that defied the cold emptiness of space. "We don't have much time," she said. "They'll be here any second." As the humans moved through the corridors, restoring systems and stabilizing life support, Kyle's crew couldn't help but watch in awe. Their technology was unlike anything the aliens had seen, clean, efficient, yet somehow elegant in its practicality. But just as hope began to take root, an explosion rocked the ship. The pursuers had fired, their weapons slamming into the hull with brutal force. "Brace for impact!" Kale shouted. The lights flickered and dimmed. Smoke filled the air. The ship lurched violently, throwing crew to the floor. In the chaos, Kale's mind flashed back to the strange signal, the mysterious voice promising help. Was this the price of salvation? Through the haze of smoke and alarm, a terrifying realization dawned. The humans weren't just rescuers, they were warriors. And the battle for survival was far from over. Kale gritted his teeth as he helped a fallen crew member to their feet. Around them, the corridors echoed with the sounds of combat and desperation. The Valin had been left to perish once, but now, with humanity's arrival, the fight was just beginning. And in the vast, merciless darkness of space, no one was truly alone anymore. The battered Valin shuddered under the violent impact of enemy fire, but the humans aboard the Endurance moved. With practiced precision, the airlock clanged shut behind the last rescued alien crew members, sealing them off from the deadly void outside and from the relentless pursuers circling like vultures. Kyle's heart pounded as he followed the human captain down the narrow corridors of the Endurance. This ship was unlike anything he'd ever seen, sleek, streamlined, humming with an energy that felt almost alive. The walls pulsed faintly with blue light, and every surface gleamed with a cold, clinical efficiency. "You've never seen technology like this," the captain said quietly. Her voice was calm, but Kale sensed a fierce determination behind it. "Humanity has evolved far beyond the myths," Kale nodded, still catching his breath. "Why come to our aid? Why risk everything for a crew your species has never met?" The captain's eyes darkened. "Because we remember what it means to be abandoned, to be left to die in the cold silence of space." She paused, then lowered her voice further. "We've been watching the galaxy for decades, waiting for the right moment to intervene. There's a war coming, one that will consume every system. We're the last line of defense. Kale felt a chill. The humans weren't just rescuers. They were warriors guarding a secret far larger than any had imagined. Suddenly, the ship rocked violently as the pursuers struck again. The Endurance's shields flared, absorbing the impact, but it was clear the attackers were relentless. "Prepare for battle stations," the captain ordered. Kale watched as the humans rallied, their movements fluid and unhesitating. They deployed, drone swarms and fired precision energy blasts that lit up the void outside like sudden deadly fireworks. Despite their advanced weaponry, the alien pursuers pressed closer, relentless and unforgiving. Then, as if summoned from the depths of nightmare, a new silhouette appeared on the horizon, a massive warship, unlike anything Kyle had seen before. It moved with terrifying grace, its hull covered in pulsating, dark energy. "Command ship," Miri whispered, eyes wide with fear. "We're outmatched." The humans didn't flinch. "Hold the line," the captain commanded. "We fight not, just for survival, but for the future of every species in this galaxy." Kale's gaze hardened. He realized then that the humans carried more than just advanced technology. They carried a burden of hope and a fierce will to survive. As the battle raged around them, Kale and the human captain stood side by side on the bridge, watching the stars burn with the fire of war. "Who is this enemy?" Kyle asked. The captain's jaw tightened. "An ancient force that thrives on chaos and destruction. They've been waiting in the shadows, growing stronger with every forgotten system." She turned to Kale. "We need allies. Your crew, your people. If we stand divided, we fall alone." Kale swallowed, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. "Then we fight," he said, voice steady. As the Endurance and Valin joined forces, Kale knew the battle was far from over. Humanity's arrival had changed everything, but it had also awakened a darkness more terrifying than any had dared to imagine. The stars were no longer silent. They were the stage for a war that would decide the fate of all life. The stars outside the Endurance's viewport were no longer just distant pinpricks of light. They had become the backdrop for a savage war. The ancient enemy, a colossal warship cloaked in shadows and pulsating with dark energy, loomed ominously, its massive weapons charging with a relentless fury. Inside the Endurance, the atmosphere was tense but focused. The humans and the Valin crew worked side by side, their combined forces a fragile beacon against the encroaching darkness. Kale moved swiftly through the corridors, coordinating with Miri and the human engineers as the ship shuddered from the enemy's repeated assaults. Every blast threatened to tear the ship apart. Every alarm screamed a warning of imminent destruction. "We can't hold out much longer," Miri warned, eyes scanning the rapidly deteriorating systems. "If the shields fail, we'll be exposed." Kyle clenched his jaw. "Then we buy time, whatever it takes." On the bridge, the human captain barked orders, her voice a sharp blade cutting through the chaos. "Deploy the drone swarms. Focus fire on their weapon arrays." Outside, the drone swarms erupted like a metallic storm, weaving through the black void to strike precise blows at the enemy warship's vulnerable points. Energy blasts flared, and the colossal ship groaned under the assault. Yet the enemy was cunning, deploying countermeasures that scrambled sensors and disrupted communications, turning the battlefield into a chaotic, deadly dance. Suddenly, a chilling transmission broke through the static, a voice dripping with cold malice, ancient and unyielding. "You defy oblivion. You cling to hope. It will end. All will fall to shadow." The voice sent a shiver through every soul aboard the Endurance and Valin. This was not just a battle for survival. It was a war for the very essence of life itself. Kyle's gaze met the human captain's. "What is that thing?" She shook her head, voice grim. "An ancient intelligence. a force that consumes worlds and leaves silence in its wake. It thrives on fear and despair. As if on cue, the enemy warship unleashed. A devastating barrage, striking the Endurance's shields with brutal precision. The hull rattled violently, systems flickering dangerously. "Brace for impact!" the captain shouted. The ship lurched, throwing crew members off balance. Sparks flew as conduits exploded, and smoke filled the corridors. Cale grabbed a nearby rail, struggling to stay upright. "We need to hit them where it hurts," he gasped. "The power core. If we can disable it, we might turn the tide." Miri nodded, eyes blazing with determination. "I'll coordinate with the engineers. We'll send a strike team." The plan was desperate but necessary. Cale led a small squad through the maze-like lower decks, their path lit only by emergency lights and the glow of failing consoles. Every step echoed with the threat of destruction. Every shadow could hide an enemy. They reached the power core chamber, a massive room humming with raw energy, its walls scarred by battle. Suddenly, the door hissed open, and dark figures emerged. Shadows come to life, alien warriors armed with lethal weapons and cold intent. The firefight was brutal and swift. Kyle's squad fought with everything they had, energy blasts lighting the chamber in bursts of violence. One by one, the alien warriors fell, but so did several of Cale's crew. Finally, Cale reached the core's control panel, his hands trembling as he initiated the overload sequence. The room vibrated with mounting energy, a ticking countdown. In the oppressive silence, "Get out! Now!" Kyle yelled. They raced back through the corridors as the power core exploded behind them, a brilliant flare lighting the darkness. Outside, the enemy warship reeled, systems failing and weapons silenced. The tide was turning. But the battle was far from over. As the Endurance and Valin prepared to press their advantage, a chilling realization settled over Kyle. This war was not just about survival. It was about hope. And hope was the most dangerous weapon of all. The explosion rocked the enemy warship, sending shockwaves rippling through the void like a sudden pulse of light in the dark. For a fleeting moment, the massive shadow looming over the battlefield seemed to falter, its menacing grip loosening. The Endurance and Valin crews seized the opportunity, pushing forward with renewed vigor. But victory was never simple. Kyle stood at the bridge of the Valin, his eyes glued to the view screens as the enemy ship slowly recovered. The colossal silhouette shifted, revealing new weapon systems powering up, deadlier and faster than before. Miri's voice crackled through the comms, laced with urgency. "They're not giving up. Reinforcements are arriving. This is bigger than we thought." Cale's mind raced. If they couldn't hold, everything they fought for would be lost. The human captain stepped beside him, her gaze hard but filled with an unspoken determination. "We're running out of time. Our forces are stretched thin, and their numbers grow. But there's one more chance. A hidden weapon buried in the Endurance's core. It's risky, but it might cripple them for good." Kyle nodded slowly. "Tell me." The captain's eyes flickered with a mixture of hope and fear. "It's an ancient human weapon, a pulse that can disrupt dark energy fields. If deployed at close range, it could tear through their shields and systems, but it requires manual activation. Right inside their ship." Kyle's breath caught. "A suicide mission?" She nodded. "A desperate gambit. But if it succeeds, we save countless lives. If it fails, then we perish." Silence filled the bridge. The weight of the decision pressed down on them all. Cale met the captain's gaze. "Then we do it. We don't leave anyone behind. We fight for every star, every soul." The plan was swift and brutal. A select team, including Cale and a handful of human soldiers, would board the crippled enemy warship, navigate its labyrinthine corridors, and manually trigger the pulse weapon. As they prepared, the corridors buzzed with a mix of fear and determination. The crew exchanged quiet words of encouragement, knowing the odds were stacked against them. The boarding shuttle shuddered as it detached from the Endurance, slipping silently through the void toward the enemy ship's gaping maw. Inside the enemy warship, darkness swallowed them. The corridors were cold and unyielding, pulsating with an alien energy that seemed to seep into their bones. Every step forward was a battle against unseen forces, every shadow a potential threat. The silence was shattered by distant echoes, footsteps, whispers, the faint hum of weapons charging. Kale's grip tightened on his weapon. "Stay sharp. They know we're here." Suddenly, a flicker of movement, a shadow detaching from the darkness, eyes glowing with malevolent intelligence. The enemy warriors were still guarding their ship with deadly resolve. A fierce firefight erupted, flashes of energy lighting the alien hallways in a deadly ballet of survival. The team pressed forward, each victory hard-won but costly. As they neared the core chamber, Kale's thoughts flickered back to the crew waiting in the Valen and Endurance. Their survival depended on the success of this mission. Finally, they reached the chamber housing the pulse weapon. Its core glowed with a fierce, unstable light, like a heartbeat pulsing with raw power. Kale stepped forward, hands steady as he prepared to activate the device. But just as his fingers touched the console, a chilling voice echoed through the chamber. "You cannot stop what is coming. Hope is a lie." From the shadows emerged the enemy commander, a towering figure wreathed in dark energy, eyes burning with ancient rage. The final battle was at hand. Kale steeled himself, for the fate of the stars and humanity's legacy rested on what came next. The enemy commander's voice reverberated through the chamber, cold and void of mercy. "You cannot stop what is coming. Hope is a lie." Kyle's pulse thundered in his ears, but his hands remained steady. He could feel the raw energy of the pulse weapon humming beneath his fingertips, a fragile beacon against the creeping darkness. Around him, his team stood ready, weapons raised, breaths shallow but determined. The commander advanced, a colossal figure wreathed in swirling tendrils, of dark energy that seemed to warp the very air. His eyes burned like dying stars, filled with ancient hatred and unrelenting purpose. "You cling to your fragile hopes," the commander hissed. "But your light will be snuffed out. We are inevitable." Kyle swallowed his fear. "Then we'll make sure you're the last thing the galaxy ever sees." The battle erupted. Energy flared in blinding bursts as Kale and his team fought tooth and nail against the commander's terrifying power. The chamber shook with the force of their clashes, shadows twisting and snapping like living things around them. Kale dodged a lethal strike that singed the air mere inches from his face, then fired a precise shot that sparked against the commander's armor. The dark energy surged, rippling like a storm, but the pulse weapon's light pulsed stronger, fighting back the encroaching shadow. Time slowed in the chaos. Kale saw the faces of his crew, the humans, the hopes of countless lives hanging on this desperate stand. He forced himself forward, every step a battle against despair. Finally, amidst the storm of energy and fury, Kale reached the pulse weapon's core. The activation panel glowed invitingly, but the commander's presence pressed like a shadow over his soul. With a deep breath, Kale slammed his palm down on the console. The pulse weapon roared to life, sending a wave of brilliant pulsating energy. Tearing through the chamber, the dark energy writhed and screamed as the weapon's power cascaded through the enemy warship, ripping apart its systems and unraveling its defenses. The commander howled, his form flickering, weakening under the relentless assault. Kyle's vision blurred, the world shaking violently as the warship began to collapse around them. "Retreat!" he shouted, urgency in his voice. His team raced back through the corridors, dodging falling debris and flickering energy fields. The ship groaned, the pulse weapon's destructive force tearing it apart from the inside out. Outside, the Endurance and Va Lin watched as the enemy warship disintegrated into a storm of particles, its dark presence finally extinguished. Kyle collapsed onto the floor of the boarding shuttle, sweat and exhaustion weighing heavy on him. The human captain approached, her face a mixture of relief and respect. "You did it. You saved us all." Kyle looked up, the enormity of what they had survived settling into his bones. But even in victory, a question lingered. What other shadows waited beyond the stars? As the Endurance and Va Lin limped away from the battlefield, Kale realized humanity's arrival had changed everything. Not just the course of a battle, but the fate of the galaxy itself. And in the silence that followed, hope burned brighter than any star. The void outside the Endurance and Va Lin was eerily quiet now. The storm of battle reduced to shimmering debris drifting silently in the cold embrace of space. The enemy warship, once a towering shadow of destruction, had been shattered, its darkness finally dispersed by the desperate bravery of Kyle and the humans. Yet the victory felt fragile, like the last flicker of a dying star. Kyle stood on the bridge of the Endurance, gazing out at the vast emptiness where the enemy had fallen. The human captain beside him was quiet, her eyes distant as if weighing the cost of the fight they'd just survived. "We won," Kale said softly, but his voice betrayed a lingering doubt. The captain nodded slowly. "Yes, but this war, it's only just begun." Kale frowned. "What do you mean?" "The enemy commander was destroyed, their warship annihilated." The captain's gaze darkened. "That was one shadow, but the darkness spreads. There are others, ancient. Forces beyond our understanding lurking in the depths between the stars. The pulse weapon bought us time, but it didn't end the threat." Kale's stomach tightened. The galaxy they'd fought to protect was larger, more dangerous than he had imagined. Suddenly, a flicker on the sensor array caught their attention, a faint rhythmic pulse emanating from a distant system, a pattern, unlike anything recorded before. Miri's voice crackled over the comm, her tone sharp with urgency. "Captain, you need to see this." On the main screen, the crew watched in stunned silence as a mysterious signal pulsed steadily through the void, an echo of a beacon, ancient and deliberate. Kyle felt a chill. The signal was a call, a warning, or perhaps an invitation. "What is it?" he asked, eyes locked on the screen. The captain's expression was grave. "A message from someone or something waiting for us." A sudden vibration ran through the ship, subtle but unmistakable. The Endurance's core hummed with an unexpected surge of energy. Kale's heart pounded. Could it be another enemy? The captain shook her head. Or an ally, or something entirely different. A silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of the unknown. Then, from the depths of space, a new silhouette emerged on the horizon. Not a warship, but a vessel of unfamiliar design, radiant and almost ethereal. It moved with a grace that defied explanation, its hull shimmering with colors that seemed to ripple through dimensions. The crew gasped. Kale stepped forward, his voice barely a whisper. "What is that?" The captain's eyes shone with a strange light. "The future, or perhaps our next challenge." As the mysterious ship drew closer, the Endurance and Va Lin prepared to greet it, not as conquerors or victims, but as survivors united by hope. Kale looked to the stars once more, the endless expanse a canvas of infinite possibilities. They had been left to perish among the stars, forgotten and abandoned. But humanity's ship had appeared, and now the galaxy was watching. The last light was not extinguished. It was just beginning to shine.